Are you ready for something interesting? And before we start, I just thought I'd give you just a little bit of a kind of entree. When people talk about artificial intelligence, it can have different meanings, and we're going to just explain to you some of the leading headlines of it. I've got a daughter, and she went on a date just last week, and I said to her, "What was that boyfriend like that you went out with?" And she said she wasn't pleased to know that he had artificial intelligence. I thought I'd get a better laugh than that, to be honest with you.
One more.
Well, so, come on, guys, we've got to make this really, we've got to kick this. You know, otherwise, we've got to make it, because artificial intelligence is really important. So think of it like this. When do you think artificial intelligence was invented? When was the phrase first actually enunciated? Give us a go. When do you think that was?
78.
When? 78? No. Any more? Come on, guys.
65.
Oh, 59.
yeah.
59?
Yeah.
Almost.
65. 1965.
No, too late. 1956. So think about that. 63 years ago, the first phrase at the Dartmouth Conference in the United States. So it's been around as a concept for quite a long time, and it's the third wave, the convergence of neural networks, deep learning, pattern matching, the Internet of Things, and scaling tasks beyond human limitation. How many of you have read the terrific book by Kai-Fu Lee, the great master of artificial intelligence? How many know that book, Kai-Fu Lee? Everybody here does. That's a book worth reading if you're interested in the space. So what we thought we'd do as a kickoff of this session, to give you a kind of understanding of how we'll skirt and zone into the issues, is to talk about the top 5 AI trends of this year, 2019. Number 1, deep learning, a form of AI which develops algorithms called artificial neural networks by modeling the human brain form and structure, and jobs including deep learning are up 5 times just since 2015. So very, very big. Number 2, facial recognition, regarded as the artificial intelligence of the future due to its immense popularity. For example, your iPhone, Face ID, obviously, and used for biometric ID, non-invasive ID, and simple deployment. Facebook's deep face tagging is also part of that. And then through to clinical trials and medical diagnostic procedures, the technology of open water, the forerunner of brain reading. You've heard of Elon Musk with Neuralink. That relies on something like that. Then the third is privacy and policy. Privacy, obviously, a very big issue in terms of artificial intelligence. When GDPR was launched as a privacy control mechanism by the European Union internationally, privacy and protection and sincere access to data privacy, very important. AI regulation and development, as we will be discussing briefly during this session, to ensure transparency, safety, and awareness of complex technology in artificial intelligence. Number 4, AI-enabled chips. We're not talking about fish and chips, we're talking about computer chips. Artificial intelligence banks on specialized processors completing the CPU and complex mathematical computations to make tasks easier. And for example, object detection. How does your camera recognize a particular object? And so you have specialized chips that can also tell you about computer vision. We have one of the world's great thinkers and creators of computer vision here with us. Speech recognition, natural language processing, particularly for the automotive and autonomous driving and healthcare industries. And of course, people like Microsoft, Amazon, Google use something called FPGA. I'm sure everyone here knows what FPGA is. Well, it's a form of chip. And also app-specific integrated circuits, ASIC, also quite well known. And finally, fifth, not least, is the cloud. Do you remember when you were first told that you had to put your data on the cloud and you said, "What? I'm going to put my data on the cloud? That's never going to happen." Well, it certainly does happen, because hyperscale cloud leaders like Ralph here with Microsoft, with Microsoft's Azure, which is one of your big platforms, If you look at Amazon Web Services, a big driver for the Amazon business, Alibaba, IBM, and Oracle, they'll grow larger in the next couple of years as services in global regions expand, and the world market for cloud computing, that's cloud platforms, SaaS. How many of you use SaaS in your businesses?
One guy. You just don't know.
He's the only smart guy in the room. Well, you know, Salesforce is based on SaaS. Business services, they'll all cross $200 billion when we go into next year. So think about it, $200 billion for cloud services, a big deal. And then, of course, a big issue that's being discussed in artificial intelligence, which we'll touch on, is ethics. What are the ethics of artificial intelligence and its impact for humanity? For example, there's a real estate company in Canada. Listen to this, really interesting. They have 14,000 real estate agents across 50 states, 3 Canadian provinces. They have no brick and mortar offices, not one. They all operate basically using the cloud to combine with each other, and it's very, very successful. IKEA does catalog verification using all of this. So I thought that if we would kick off very pleased to have Ralph Haupter. Ralph, welcome here. It's great to have you here. Ralph has got a great view of this space. He is the corporate vice president at Microsoft, the president of all of Asia, also covering Australia and New Zealand. Ralph, welcome. Really great to have you here. And gentlemen, Tony Han from WeRide, Devon Parak from Insight, and we've got something really special for you that's come all the way from Japan. So ladies and gentlemen, let's just warm it up a bit. Let's give them a nice welcome round of applause. Okay, enough from me. So Ralph, two Ralphs on the same panel. Very unusual. Okay, how does AI impact people in work? That's a big issue.
I think the question on AI is not anymore if it is relevant or why it is relevant. It's actually how it is relevant in the day-to-day business. And I think that's the stage where we are. We just had an opportunity to run a study recently with IDC, asking in 15 countries in Asia the real impact executives are expecting on AI. And it turns out that we are expecting doubling on productivity and doubling on innovation through technology of AI. So I think first we need to have a base where we say everybody is clear it is happening and impacting every individual on his daily job. People would argue that the first impression on AI is happening on private experiences, where you have some facial recognition experiences. But I think the real momentum we are seeing right now is in commercial businesses, in multiple industries where AI applications are used and AI experiences are coming to life. So take future manufacturing places is right now hot. So we see companies are building twin manufacturing places on scale. You take company Unilever, where we just did one. So we basically have a full digital footprint of a manufacturing plant now realized, where all is on machine learning and data models based on how they build new products and how they develop new production cycles real time. We have basically them within 24 hours being able to test and run product technology just by running it on full digital footprint on companies. You go on healthcare, on cancer research, Ralph, you mentioned it briefly, but this is all about image recognition. And you have now, I just was recently in India in a hospital where basically none of the doctors anymore want to treat a patient without being backed up by a computer who's backing through facial recognition and visual data, the judgment and the medication. So it is in real time coming in all kind of professions. You can go through all industries. What you're experiencing today in FSI and financial industry, all risk judgment is going on big data and machine learning right now. All banks are going on digital footprints right now. Payments are going on pure facial recognition, so your credit card is the last thing you need these days going forward. It's all based on your body biometric footprint. And you just see it on scale coming. And I think that's where innovation happens, and that's where productivity happens. And then I think later in the discussion, we'll obviously touch on what does it mean for people's individual impact on profile of skills you need to have tomorrow in the job.
Right.
I think that's a discussion we should have later. How you think on your personal data, so which goes into the trust and privacy space. I think that we should flesh out in that discussion. But I think the first base is, let's not ask the question why and if it is happening. It's just more the question how it is happening and how you participate as entrepreneur, how you participate as an individual in that new world.
So give me an example. Food supply in India. That's something that would have the benefit of having AI in terms of the supply chain and the whole potential manufacturing process.
So food supply in India, you all know the system in India, right? So it is cooked at home, it is delivered by a food boy, which has
different carriers,
which has a very specific system ongoing there. At the same time, one of the biggest food carrier is actually a company called Ola. This is one of the biggest cloud computing using data analytics company on the planet, which is running their full food logistics now literally on the cloud, and they use predictive methodology to understand which place want to have which food. And just to put the tipping point on that one, they stopped even delivering the food as a platform, and they're moving now to cloud kitchens. So what they do is they have now virtual kitchens brought in place where they, depending on demand, put cooks into what you would call it offices, they call it kitchens, to produce food real time for the places where they want to have it. So yes, even there we're changing through technology what we do.
One other example I'd like you to just have a look at is mining technology. Give us some sense of that.
So in oil, in gas, in mining, there are a couple of things happening right now, as an engineer, very exciting stuff. So there is autonomous mining is one, so the whole transportation in the mining is going very heavy on autonomous driving, and Tony can elaborate on that more. Then you have the whole drilling and seismic technology is all on heavy machine data models built. So the recent announcement we did with Chevron, where we basically take the whole operation of Chevron onto the cloud, is all about building data models together with companies like Schlumberger, where we build these data models. We predict actually kind of the resources in a great way. And you get into the full supply chain, which is part of the trick, right? Where if you have autonomous mobile and autonomous picking of goods, you can actually decide in which harbor you want to have what kind of good depending on the stock market price prediction. And that's what is happening. So we now have stock market analytics going on price points of if you ship coal or if you ship some silver or whatever stuff. But that's the kind of supply chain you're building by using technology and predictive analytics and data models.
So this could be a great indicator for investors and for companies that are looking to take not necessarily a bet, but if, let's say, you're in that sector as an investor, this really gives you a better clarity in a very, sometimes very risk-rich environment.
That's what insurance companies do. That's what banking companies do. When you get today your wealth profile, that's what is backed up all by data models right now, which you get. Look at all e-commerce supply chains. It's all, the theme is supply chain, and the theme is building a data model. And the data model is what all companies do today, because you mentioned cloud. I think the real platform for having an AI discussion is a data model which each company needs to have, and an understanding what data means to build capability for AI. And that's then the platform to go.
Okay, so just another final question. How does Microsoft create trusted AI systems? Because this goes into the whole area of trust and reliability. And
first of all, I would say I'm not 100% sure we have figured it out in all senses of what is needed to have in new world of AI and a new world of technology, being really able to deliver products and services where you and I and everybody in this room can say, I exactly understand what I'm doing, I'm exactly understanding what I'm giving here and what I'm asking to do. But as a company, I think it starts with acknowledging that we are part of an ecosystem where we have responsibility as a tech company to step up and make sure that technology is delivering what people want and not the other way around. By doing so, we have been shipping principles for AI solutions, 6 ethical principles for AI solutions. We have been initiating a Paris verdict, which basically brought companies together 18 months ago in Paris and build a platform where we define what it needs to look like if you build ethical and trusted applications. We, in our company, have an ethical board. So when we develop products today, you actually need, depending on what you do, you need to go through an ethical board and ask for approval to have a facial recognition application built for a customer, actually built for an organization. So we try to build an entity where we bring common sense and kind of human criteria into play and have literally a review board. So as much as engineers get excited and kind of want to crack the world, we have an entity in our company which is judging and making a call if you think that is appropriate to be used and developed or not. And still, it's a path of learning. It's a path of understanding what technology can do. And I'm convinced that we only see the surface on what is going on and going forward. And finally, I think the society itself, so everybody, each of us individually, needs to learn what AI does and what you need to have to understand AI. So we are very focused right now on doing a skills initiative for our commercial customers. We have almost with every government in Asia an initiative on training on technology, understanding on technology. Because at the end of the day, we as humans want to make sure that technology is supporting us and nothing else. To be in that position, we need to understand how technology works and how technology can be applied. And so there's a big component in that process, I would say, to learn. It's like you need to buy a car and you need a driving license. But that's 2 different entities, and we want to be one. You buy technology, and we want to make sure that you get educated by us on how to use the technology. We feel there's a responsibility we have, and that's what we're doing, and we're pushing very hard.
Well, when the Deputy Prime Minister of Singapore was speaking earlier today with Mike Milken, he was talking about the imperative of the government here to really educate people, because in this whole new world, if you do not have people educated and skills that are educated, by the way, AI doesn't mean that people are going to lose their jobs all over the world. There will be some diminution, but there are going to be many more jobs that are going to be created by this. Devin Parrick, we'd like to go to you. More than 50% of companies don't have a written policy on AI or ethical policies. Only 25% of companies are using AI. You were the managing partner of Insight Partners. You're based in New York City. And you've got artificial intelligence has an image of spontaneous intelligence, but it should be machine learning and massive amounts of data. Tell us how you fashion that, because you invest in really interesting companies that are right on the bleeding edge of where things are going.
Yeah, I actually hate the term AI. It was created, I guess, in 1956. We learned that earlier today. I think machine learning is really what we're talking about. I think that everybody who's ever watched Netflix, you've been subject to machine learning because it's made a recommendation. If you bought something on Amazon, you've had machine learning because it's recommending something based on what you bought. And if you get your credit card bill with a bunch of offers in it, it's looked at your purchase history and made recommendations on other things you might want to buy. All of those are machine learning / AI applications. If you go back 20 years ago, convenience stores figured out that you put the beer next to the diapers. At the time, you didn't have POS systems, you didn't have massive data sets. Clerks just noticed that men came in, they picked up diapers, and then they picked up beer, so they put the beer next to the diapers. Now, with Amazon Web Services, Azure, the cost of data processing coming down significantly, you can take all that data that's integrated, for example, in a retail application at the point of service, analyze it at scale, and you don't need to do observational machine learning. You can do database machine learning. And that's really most of the applications that we're going to talk about today, whether it be the medical applications that we were just talking about, that Ralph was just talking about earlier, or anything else.
Give us an example of a health example.
Well, the one that I was at a lunch with the head of Mount Sinai Medical System in New York, which is one of the largest medical centers in New York, and it was 3 or 4 of us, and one of the other participants' son was in medical school, and he asked the head of Mount Sinai any advice, and he said, yes, don't be a radiologist. And the person naturally asked why. And he said, well, today, this was 6 months ago, today we're reading systems, machine learning systems are reading nanograms at 90% efficacy relative to doctors. And that 10%, he said that gap is going to be gone in a year. And that same applications are going to be true in oncology. They're going to be true in a lot of other things, as Ralph was talking about earlier. However, if you are diagnosed with cancer, no one's really that interested in talking to a computer about what the treatment options are going to be.
Right.
So it's not that medicine is going to be eliminated. Doctors are going to continue to have a role, but the role is going to be different. And even how we educate doctors is going to have to change.
Very important.
For example, I'm on the board of NYU Langone, which is one of the other hospital systems, and one of the things that they've changed in their recruiting process for doctors is much more looking at things like empathy and bedside manner. Because all of a sudden, if you can have a system make the actual diagnostic determination, the relationship with the patient becomes that much more important. And so there are lots of implications of technology that go beyond efficacy. And I don't believe that all jobs be eliminated. I'm probably a little bit more of a bear than you are and it probably goes beyond the purview of this panel or the amount of time that we have as to the implications on job loss of a lot of the applications that we're talking about. I don't think doctors will be the ones who will be most affected, but there's many other examples where I think, for example, truck drivers, which is 3 million truck drivers in the US, we're not going to teach all of them how to code. And I don't think we are, from a government policy standpoint, and I spend a lot of time talking to politicians, I don't think there's enough thought going into how do we think about the workforce of the future? How do we think about educating our youth today, not making the assumption that, again, everybody's going to be a software programmer, but what are the careers of the future? How do we think about them? I don't necessarily
And the
answer.
industries of the future.
I'm
and
sorry?
the industries of the
And the industries of the future, and there's been some good books written on that topic as well. And then how do we change our educational system to kind of adapt to that?
So you've, at Inside Partners, you manage around $20 billion of investments, and you've invested in more than 300 companies that are in the space. And in fact, you just recently, in May, acquired a company for $780 million called Recorded Future. What was that all about?
Well, let me give you the structure of how we think about investments in AI. And we don't just invest in AI. And I'll talk about Recorded Future in that context. And we really break up machine learning / AI into kind of 3 categories. We call them layer 1, layer 2, layer 3.
What's that?
So layer 1 is, call it the algorithms. And the good news about the algorithms is while there are companies, private companies in this space, some of the best technology in layer 1 is open source. So Tensor, which came out of Google, PyTorch, which came out of Facebook. There's very, very good open source technology. So if you're a smart Stanford engineer and you've got a great application in a market, you don't need to go to some proprietary model in order to build your application. And that's good. That's good from a development standpoint. That's good because it encourages innovation. It's not great if you're an investor. If you're trying to invest in layer 1, that's probably not the best place to invest, which is why we don't have a lot of investments in that layer, because you actually have a lot of really, really high quality free platforms. Layer 2 is what we call cross-industry applications. So these are applications that are independent of a particular vertical market. And the best example of that would be cybersecurity, and Recorded Future would be an example of that. If the 4 of us on this panel, we all care about security at our respective organizations. Our organizations are different sizes, but to the extent that there are security threats that Insight has, that Microsoft might have in the future, Microsoft's probably not going to have a problem leveraging the intelligence that they can get from threats that have happened on Insight's platform to them. Because I don't think we're generally rooting for malicious attacks. I mean, at least I don't root for malicious attacks against competitors. So that's something where across industries, you can get the benefit of data. Another example of that is think about fraud detection. And Amazon built their own fraud detection system. It's one of the best fraud detection systems out there. Why? Because they're now close to the largest retailer in the world. They have a massive budget. Now think about you're a $20 million revenue company and you want to have a fraud detection system. It's pretty much impossible because of the volume of data that you have relative to the volume of Amazon data. The disparity is massive. On the other hand, if you're a software company who sells to that company a fraud detection solution, and you say that part of the advantage is that every other company who buys the software from us is going to, we're going to basically de-identify individual data, but make that available to all of you, you're actually benefiting from the network effect of even companies that are competitors, right? And so one of the other, and so we've got investments in that kind of fraud space as well. Recorded Future is in that first category. It's basically doing both, by the way, manual research in places like the dark web, but then also kind of automated research across everybody who's on that platform and kind of helping secure their networks. And then layer 3 is what we consider industry-specific applications, right? So I know there's a lot of insurance companies. I don't know if they're here, but I know that at this conference there's
no, that's a big
companies.
issue.
But we have an investment in a company called Tractable, and I'll use the US example of if you own a car and you get into a car accident, the historical model was, still is largely the model, you call an adjuster. The adjuster comes to your house, or you have to take it to a center. That can take weeks. And you know, people's premise used to be in insurance, oh, well, I'm making money on the float, so it's fine if I delay the claim. And I think most property insurance companies did the analysis and found out that the administrative cost associated with that is way higher than any float benefit, because you're not floating for a year or 2 years. And so what Tractable basically is a solution that basically says, take a picture, we upload it to the database, and manual intervention happens on an exception reported basis. So if you total a Lamborghini, you probably still need an adjuster, because that's a very, very large claim. But if you have a Tesla in Texas and you had a fender bender, there's been 1,000 other claims that look like that. There's a set data set. You get an automated kind of answer right away. It's a better experience for the consumer.
And actuarial accuracy.
Actuarial accuracy, because you're taking the human judgment out of it. I feel sorry for this person. I don't feel sorry for this person. This person was rude. I want to deny their claim. You take all of that out of it. And you know, and today, you know, we're still probably a year to 18 months away from having enough data set across all of our customers to be totally automated. But we're on our path. And I was saying earlier that I made a presentation about this topic in China to Ping An. And they were talking about how they use machine learning to determine, based on traffic patterns, where they anticipate accidents are going to happen. And they send claims adjusters to those locations. I figured there might be a better solution to maybe stop the accidents. But, and so, you know, I think there's probably 10 other examples of I won't go through them all, but we can certainly talk about more. But that's how we think about, you know, that's how we think about it in those 3 layers.
Very interesting. So you mentioned China. We're very happy, Dr. Tony Han, who is based in Guangzhou, and we'd like to hear about yourself because you are the CEO of WeRide, which is a China company, but you spent 20 years in the United States. You did your PhD, particularly looking at areas like computer vision and natural language processing, but more particularly, you have now got China's leading autonomous driving company, and it's focused on L4 self-driving technology. What's L4?
Okay, L4 is a standard definition by SAE. So when we talk about smart cars, there's usually a definition from L0 to L5.
So tell us what they are.
Yeah, so L0 is just dumb car without any automatic function. L1 is just like the old car, like you have a cruise control. And L2 level is just a simple combination of basic techniques like lane keeping. And L3 level is just more or less, today if you have a Tesla car or you have X motor car that can give you certain autonomous driving skill, but you have to be the owner of the car. You should be responsible for the car. What we are doing is L4 level autonomous driving, which means if there's accident happen, the car is responsible for the driving. But actually, it's only operated in a restricted area. The Holy Grail, which won't happen in the recent 20 years, will be L5 level, which is autonomous driving car in any place a car can run, and a human driver can drive, the car can run itself. So to us, and with my many years of experience and research, we are sure that L4 level autonomous driving will come to life in very, very recent, in a very short period, maybe 3 to 5 years.
3 to 5 years for L5.
Yeah, L4.
L4.
L4. L5 will stay, look at the recent comments by the CEO of Waymo. It may still take like more than 15 years or 20 years to come.
Right. Yeah. So you were the former chief scientist of the autonomous driving unit at Baidu, and you were leading all of the research into perception, simulation, hardware, and sensing teams. And now with WeRide, you've actually had a big investment from the alliance of Renault, Nissan, and Mitsubishi. And you established your company in 2017. You've got 3 research facilities that you operate, 1 in Silicon Valley and 2 in China. And tell us about this very interesting thing you developed called the Robo Taxi, and also autonomous buses that can really benefit humanity and benefit the older citizens in a society. Just give us some idea of that.
Okay, so the idea is like today you can call Uber and you can call Lyft, call Grab in Singapore, but always there's a human driver inside the car and drive you there. But through some analysis, the mainly cost you pay to the Uber or to the Lyft is go to the wallet of the driver. Of course, human labors are very expensive and they are getting more and more expensive. So now, how should we make the taxi more accessible to everybody? How should we make it more cost effective? Today we are in the artificial intelligence era. That is meaning that we want to use AI technology to make the car drive by itself in certain restricted area. That's how we plug autonomous driving into this business model. It's called a Robo Taxi. Basically, you are using autonomous driving technology to make a taxi car drive by itself. Therefore, you can save the cost of human labor. The beneficial to the human society is like almost all the developed countries, like Japan, South Korea, and China. The society is aging. Okay, human getting older and older. It's more and more difficult to find young people who want to serve as a taxi driver. The cost is increasing. Therefore, if we can use a machine to replace human power to do the autonomous driving, we can make the transportation cheaper, safer, and more accessible. That's the whole story.
So you were the first to really get the first autonomous driving licenses in China, and now you're pretty much #1 in China in this space.
Oh yeah, in terms of the number of the autonomous driving cars, we are the #2. We are #2 to the #1 is Baidu. But in terms of technology, I think we are really advanced.
So give us a sense of how you see this whole notion of intelligent data being used, and taking some of what Ralph had said and what Devin has said. Have you got any thoughts on further ways in which what you're doing can be beneficial at a kind of human level, but also leads to some interesting future business?
Sure. Here, I just want to quote one of my colleagues' sentence. My colleague in Baidu, Andrew Ng, once mentioned the AI is just like the electricity in the new world. Right. So, he also mentioned every big company should have a position called the Chief AI Officer. So to me, I really believe so. I believe the AI will be the electricity for the next generation or for the next century. So I believe autonomous driving will be the best electricity appliance in the next 20 years or next 30 years. But I want to talk a little bit about overall, what AI will change us. So to me, I believe AI as a new electricity may really help us to develop technology and make education much easier, and then we can develop technology even faster. So it has very, very broad future. Ralph and Devin all mentioned about apply to the business, apply to the security. To me, I think, just think about it as electricity, every aspect. To me, when I talk to people from different fields, I always can find some application of artificial intelligence. So maybe if you don't know about AI, better grab a book like Kai-Fu Lee's book, read about it. It's very, very important.
Very important. So the three of you, do you think that we should call it augmented intelligence or artificial intelligence? What's your sense of that? Because we're augmenting things.
Yeah, I think artificial intelligence definitely. In some aspect is augment human power. Like today, you know, all the financial reports are generated by human, but you know, you leverage on the software like Excel, all kinds.
Judgments have to be made on looking at the data.
Data. But there's a very profound question like this topic, humanity and artificial intelligence. These days, you know, we don't know the answer whether we can create the general artificial intelligence that make a machine can do thinking, machine can develop new technology. The best answer is currently we don't know. But do you want to try it? I will say I'm so fascinated in try it. You know, invent something, can invent something new things. Definitely, I think in that two aspects, augmented reality, artificial intelligence, we should try both, and they are different.
Well, this is a perfect segue to take us to Issei Takino. Issei is here from Japan, from Tokyo, the CEO of Mugin, M-U-G-I-N, very interesting, the world's only all-purpose intelligent robot controller with motion planning. And when we spoke earlier about the supply chain, and particularly when Ralph had alluded to manufacturing, tell us about some of the incredible advances you've had with controllers for robots. We're not talking about the robot, we're talking about the controller. Tell us about that.
Okay, hello. I speak actually worse English here. Please be patient. And I'm CEO of the Mugin, and my company, Mugin, is no robot makers. We are actually making the controllers, universal intelligent controller for the industrial robot. It's more like universal platform for all the industrial robot. So you know, we actually develop intelligent robot controllers, and this controller has two features mainly. So one is unifies all the UI, and then the second one is like this controller is make robot more smarter. So robot can be applied to the many like industries, many other field, many other tasks, so that the robot in the market is going to expand. So this is the whole logic, and then we actually make the robot smarter. Actually, we can use any kind of robot, Fanuc, the Yasukawa's, Mitsubishi, anything. Actually, right now, like everybody's making different controller, different platform. It's like all the age of the cell phone, right before the Android, and then we are making everything unified right now. And then, but all the robot maker have to give us confidential information to bypass their softwares. But they don't want to do it usually, because they do it because we have a killer application. We make the robot smarter and they give the solutions, automation solution to the customers, especially for the manufacturing and the logistics. One of the major accomplishment is JD.com. It's like the second biggest the e-commerce company in China, and we actually deployed 20 robots and then accomplished entire automated warehouse. So the warehouse actually dealing with all the expensive the electrical devices starting from the cell phones, everything. When you push the buttons, and the robot is going to pick everything, sort everything, pack everything. From very beginning to the shipping, we automate everything by the robot. But if you want to use a robot in the warehouse is very different from manufacturing. Like the robot has to deal with so many SKUs, right? 40, 60,000 SKUs every day, and the 200, 300 is going to be renewed every day. So you cannot program for each SKU one by one. That's why our controllers, with motion planning technologies, make the robot smarter. With the 3D visions, robot can see himself, can move himself. Then robot is going to move. It's very hard to explain, without a movie or something. But that's what we do.
So effectively, what Mugin does really is you make brain parts.
Yeah.
Brain parts for robots in manufacturing. Would you say that that's accurate?
Yes, we are not making robot. We are using, there are so many good robot makers in the world already. Like 60% of the, entire industrial robot is Japanese made. But, if their brain part is become more universal and more smarter, then expand, the robot market, right? That's why we start making the controller, only controller part, the platform part.
So Ralph, just hearing what he said, and particularly with what you're doing with your cloud business, and certainly in terms of your wider manufacturing and supply chain support, the banana industry, bananas are the most popular fruit in the world. And there's now artificial intelligence that can actually identify on a banana tree whether the banana is ripe to be picked. And you'd spoken about food production and how Microsoft and certainly data evaluation, data analysis, data effectively serving up is all helping supply chain management. When you'd mentioned about warehouse picking of products, Amazon, of course, are well known for all of that. Tell us about some of what you think in these areas.
I think one of the really fascinating points to start is getting a sense on that we are in a data-driven environment as a society. And I think whatever we develop and whatever dreams we have, it is very, very important that the starting point of all that discussion is a deep understanding what data you get in the meantime and how you actually then compute. And then the second one where I want to go is that the magic of everything right now is, and that's basically the race which we are in from a technology perspective, is what kind of compute power do you have to make that data meaningful in any context? And then building on that, you have some kind of, I would say, input mechanisms where I say I have a visual input mechanism, I have a sensor input mechanism, I have a voice input mechanism, that this is the combination. And so I think we are just on the edge to understand how we can apply these two pieces, data and then the compute power with the visuals, on building different applications and solutions what you have. And so, as Tony rightfully says, he's excited on complicated problems. So if you think banana picking is the most complicated problem, you should expect that tomorrow is somebody on the run to find out how to do banana picking.
They're already doing that.
And I would say from a society perspective, I would like to see us do a lot on the healthcare side. I would like to see us a lot on the energy consumption optimization side. So that is where I think we will get energized and use that technology going.
Pun intended, energized.
Yeah, no, I am.
Very good.
Because that's, I think, where we should think through on how this technology can make a difference for us and how we should be positive to that momentum of AI being the new energy. And so you had another point on people are scared on jobs and what it does for the society. Also, I want to reflect on that one. When we did the study, which I mentioned before, we actually asked on what people think about how many think they lose their jobs. It's actually, we know 60% of jobs will change.
Will change,
but people think there will be, at the end, 3% more new jobs than actually lost jobs. So I think we are in a moment of society realizing there's a big change coming, but we're getting also to a point to see that the opportunity is coming with the change. And some of our markets need actually new technology. So go to Japan, right? The biggest challenge in Japan for innovation is actually workforce itself.
Why is that?
The biggest, it's the aging side of society. And then if you look at the innovation, I would say each second commercial company I'm visiting in Japan right now, they did in the past photocopier or kind of printing machines, now they do healthcare. They did in the past cars, now they do healthcare. So the whole Japanese commercial business is refocusing on reinventing healthcare and using all technology and data on that one. And so I feel very excited on the moment where we are. I think AI is the word which is 20 years ago has been World Wide Web. It is kind of initiating a new thinking on getting to a new century of technology.
Good point.
And we're on the path to understand that the social impact on jobs is not a fear, it's an opportunity.
Right.
And we see different markets on picking it up. And so I feel pretty excited on where we are right now.
Kevin, what do you say about that?
You mean on the job piece?
Yeah, just generally.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm probably a little bit more bearish as it relates to the job piece. It's less clear to me in certain markets that we're going to have net job growth, and even if that were to happen, I think you're going to have a lot of vertical markets, and maybe medicine might not be one of them, where even if you don't have job declines, you'll probably see wage declines. And when I look at kind of what's happening today, kind of some of the political upheaval in my country and in other countries, certainly in the US. And when I'm not even talking about AI now, I'm talking about automation. Automation has definitely had an impact on wage increases in manufacturing and other sectors. And if you look at the states where there's the largest political unrest, which drove some of the political changes that we had, there were states that had high levels of automation. So I don't have an answer. I don't have a here's the solution, and nor do I know exactly what the impact will be. But when I interviewed Kai-Fu Lee at CFR, I actually read, 10 or 15 different studies on job loss. I was actually shocked that, like the low estimate was 10% and their estimates of 40%, of jobs being displaced. Now, I probably don't buy 40 and, but I didn't see anyone who was talking about 3%, so I've not read the Microsoft study. But so I'm probably a little bit more concerned about what could happen. I'm very excited about the technology. I'm very excited about the implications it can have. I just worry about some of the other societal impacts it could have. And
these new companies and investments that you are thinking about are all very interesting in this kind of stuff.
But if you're a claims adjuster, you're not rooting for Tractable. I mean, to be clear, because Tractable's goal, if they succeed, is to eliminate claims adjusters. Now, maybe claims adjusters are going to become something else. I can't tell you what that something else is. The one other thing I'll say, just as it relates to policy, because you talked about policy earlier, that we haven't maybe hit on, is there are complicated ethical issues around these things, and I think HR is a great example.
That is a good point, because a lot of HR is now using artificial intelligence to just basically process job applications.
Right. We use some technology in that regard as well, but you take it to the extreme, and thankfully most organizations aren't using it the way I'm describing it. But just to make the point, if you're Goldman Sachs and all of a sudden you say, and I'm not picking on Goldman Sachs, you can pick any large financial organization or any large organization at all, and say the way we're gonna interview analysts, and the way we're gonna pick analysts is we're gonna look at everybody who made partner at Goldman Sachs over the last 25 years, and that's how we're gonna determine who we hire. There's gonna be people who look like the two Ralphs, but there's not gonna be anybody who looks like the rest of us that's gonna come out of that screen. Now, that's not purposeful. I don't think Goldman Sachs would wake up in the morning and say, that's what I want. But if you just took a historical data set, there's embedded implicit bias, because there was bias in the historical hiring process. So there are lots of that's one example. There's other examples that you have to be conscious of biases that can exist in an algorithm, because at the end of the day, that's why it's not artificial intelligence. That's why I hate the term, because it's not necessarily intelligent. It's taking a data set, it's analyzing it at scale, and optimizing for whatever it is that you want the algorithm to optimize for.
That's something that you have pointed out, and that you don't get a perfect solution, particularly what you're doing with your control mechanisms for robotics. Sometimes you get it right, sometimes you don't. You've got to try and get the best mean average that gives you the end result for your robot to do effective end results.
Yes, so, in order to answer the questions, this is very important stuff. We are not actually, so we are actually controlling robot, right? And then our algorithm, our system actually doesn't use deep learning, but we are using the motion planning. Motion planning, AI is a big definitions, and then deep learning, there's deep learning, and then motion planning is kind of opposite from deep learning. Motion planning is actually, it's more like algorithm and rational logic, logics. It's a software system, based on the logic. So it's more like a super engineering. Sounds kind of boring, but when we move the real stuff in the real world, it's very important to assure the quality. So deep learning is, I don't deny the deep learning technologies, but in lots of argument, people praise the deep learning. And then people, if you hear deep learning, what is deep learning? Keep improving. Then everybody thinks, oh, this is the ultimate solutions, right? But for example, when you move the machines or robot, there are the problems. We always have to assure the quality. We have to know why this stuff happens, right? And also learning duration is going to be the problem. So we of course, deep learning is very, useful and then technologies. But when you do some products, especially production manufacturing, it's a failure. It's not forgiven. So we have to choose the applications we are going to apply the deep learning. But let's say if you apply deep learning to the platform of the robot keep doing the production, and then sometimes something happens, and then robot starts producing defect product, and then your plant manager is going to ask you, so why this problem happened, and I have to answer, this is deep learning. That's what I don't know. And then maybe, this robot already learned. And then plant manager asks you again. So this problem is not going to happen again. I said, maybe. Let's see. So
Tony, what do you say to that?
Okay, so first of all, I agree 50% of your comments. Just really want to comment about the motion planning because, I know respect your expertise in that field, and motion planning is also a very key technology in autonomous driving, right? We use perception to find out a world, and then one key component is using motion planning to move your car around. Our first generation is exactly that, what you mentioned. I respect your achievement to deploy 20 robots in Jingdong's warehouse. I heard about that work. And then the key question is about explanation of deep learning. So deep learning for a long time has been criticized for not explainable. Is there something wrong? I don't know what happened to the network. So to us, we do use deep learning in motion planning. Okay, our base ground is the rule-based, all kinds of control theory-based motion planning. And on top of that, we build up deep learning. So that is a very good example about how do we combine a traditional method with cutting-edge deep learning research. That is, the traditional things set you the boundary. Okay, there's a boundary you cannot go. But can you do better? Deep learning will help you to do better. Therefore, if deep learning do some crazy things, I know you cannot go out of the boundary, you cannot hit the fence. The traditional motion planning algorithm will tell me, don't go out of the road. But in the road, if some accident happens, how will you maneuver your car and to bypass certain accidents and doing some maybe James Bond tactics? Deep learning can do that. Therefore, I think, that's why I think maybe offline we can discuss this. I think it's very, very interesting topic.
I don't deny deep learning process and technology, right? It's just, we have to be careful, where to apply to.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. So using the traditional algorithm set a boundary and then using the deep learning to make it better.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go to the James and the Jamie Bonds here in the audience. Let's ask for some questions. Hopefully this has spiked and sparked some of your own thinking. If you've got something to say, we'd love to hear you, to challenge or to ask these four great minds and experts. This is DeepMind, by the way. It's not just Google's DeepMind for 400 million pounds. But that gentleman over there, can we give him a mic and tell us your name and where you're from, and let's hit the button.
Hi, I'm Steven from Credit Suisse. So I just four great minds here. I just want to know what you think. We know that with augmented intelligence, artificial intelligence, a lot of things can be better for us. So I guess as investors, that is where the obvious opportunity is in the near future. But then in our work, so much is about GDP growth, which is top line consumption. What kind of assets, what kind of service, but consumption. And that requires people. And as the world continues on this path of development, the trends in terms of us replacing ourselves, the sources of demand, doesn't look too good on a very, very long term.
So what's the question?
The question is, can these four minds conceive artificial life? What excites these four minds here? That's really at the threshold of what you could think or imagine.
Well, we've got a test tube baby, we've got a test tube sheep. You're talking about?
Artificial life.
I'm not sure how to answer the question.
I know my mother-in-law is an object example of that, but
so I can't beat that answer. So
Okay, I'll try to answer that question. To me, okay, human or machines, okay. You know, artificial life, lots of time we think about things, always give a human-centric definition. Like for a long time, in old times, we believe Earth is the center of the universe, and later we found it's not, right? For a long time, we have thought we are the only species that can think and creative things, and then later, the recent gene research find out, you know, Neanderthals are there. They are good at making tools. So I would say, what's wrong with that artificial life? You know, do you think people with the pacemaker, you know, I mean cardiac pacemaker, half robot? I don't think they are half robot, right? Therefore, I think with more technology development, we may use 3D printed organs in our body, and we may use some storage in our brain to help people losing their memories. What's wrong with that? I'm open to that. If one day my body died and my brain exists, I don't mind to have a robotic torso and robotic arms and put my brain inside. It's still very fun, you know. I may become a very strong and very handsome guy, so what's wrong with that?
You're not doing too badly, Tony. Don't worry about that.
Yeah, I'm not going to try to top that answer.
Ralph, what do you say to that? I mean, this is a question that has obviously been a scientific query for years, but just in the terms of perhaps improving using artificial technology, not artificial technology, technology is real and humans are real.
Yeah, it's a tough one, and everybody can start dreaming his own dream, but I think in food production, we see kind of pushing the system right now on not artificial, but genetic extended stuff.
Right.
I think on really extending life mechanisms, we see that one. I leave the dream to you. What do you think really artificial life means in that very specific context? But it's very clear that technology will extend life and will impact on quality of on products we're using for real life.
Let's take another question. Who's going to test the squad? There you are. Tell us your name, where you're from, and go for it.
Okay, Joseph McAndrew, Singapore Verge Health Tech Fund. I'm actually not really afraid of artificial intelligence. I'm afraid of artificial idiocy. And the question I have for you is actually, how do you quality control all the AI solutions that are going to be proliferating throughout the entire world? I mean, we remember in the dot-com era, the IT department was our saviors. They're going to, make life easy, make things wonderful, make things fast and efficient, and cut costs. And now we see the IT department is a four-letter word. So how do we prevent that from happening again with AI?
Well, one thing I'd say, and it was referenced, and this might not answer your exact question, but I think is making sure that the decisions that any algorithm come out are explainable, right? Explainability, and I think you referenced it a little bit earlier. And just to go back to my kind of HR application, if I interview somebody and I kind of deny them a job, I need to be able to explain why it is, right? And it can't be, well, I'm not giving them a job because they're a woman. That's not an acceptable answer. I'm not going to give them a job, but I need to actually have an explanation that makes sense. The problem with a lot of AI systems is it says, well, reject Ralph. But you don't know why they reject Ralph. It was just based on all this historical kind of data. And I think in certain types of applications, and I'm using HR, but credit is another great example. Why did you not extend somebody credit? Well, it could be that if you looked at a data set, could be because of their race. And humans are having to explain their decisions. And it's going to be important that an AI application has explainability as well. And without explainability, I don't want to call it idiocy necessarily, but there could be a flaw in an application if the system can't actually explain why it made the decision that it made.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we hope that during this session we've given you some kind of travelogue through this really not so perplexing. It's actually something that is real and realistic, and something that can really enhance your investment outlook, your financial planning, and more particularly, just thinking of those companies that are going to make those great leaps, like some of the great companies during the internet era. So we'd like to give a great, great vote of thanks. Yisei, thanks for bringing us some Mugen juice. It was great hearing about that. Devin, terrific to hear about your observations on this, and good luck with all of your investments and analysis and going forward. Ralph, great to hear this breadth that you apply to all of Asia, which is your responsibility, and certainly the kind of breadth that Microsoft are bringing with Satya Nadella, just such a great, great leader of that company. So thanks. And Doctor, bringing some great insight. Ladies and gentlemen, these gentlemen, we don't have a lady, but we will have next year, you can be sure of that. And that's not artificial intelligence, that is brute intelligence. So please give them a big round of applause. They are great. Thank you.
Thanks very much.